Evening, everybody. I think we should make a start. Tonight is the first of a series of 3 lectures I've organized for you that looks at examples of how a next generation of architects constructs their own successful forms of practice. The 3 invited practitioners are HHF Architects, who we will meet in a moment. Then we have Anton Garcia Abril from Ensemble Studio this Wednesday. And finally, Luc Merckx and his Rococo Relevance project, who will be with us on Monday the 14th. The only thing that all 3 offices have in common is that they are the product of a European context and that they are in their late 30s or early 40s. Otherwise, their ambitions, their working methods, and indeed their architectures are very different. HHF's stated aim is to progress through building, to build as much as possible and everywhere, which requires a certain level of pragmatism. Ensemble Studio, on the other hand, have found ways to engage directly and creatively with the construction process itself, while Luc Merckx combines his historical research with the newest digital technology to design installations and objects. The idea behind the series as a whole is to show that despite the apparent monopoly of mega offices like Foster or SOM, or our kind sponsor KPF, and after a generation of fame-hungry architects and their iconic styles, a new generation of young architects are indeed finding ways of operating a small to medium-sized office and not only survive, but also succeed in leaving a mark on the profession as a whole. What I hope these lectures will show you, the AA student of today and practicing architect of tomorrow, is that in a rapidly changing profession you can't rely anymore on established models of practice, but that you have to adapt your métier to ever-changing contexts. But I also hope that you will see that you don't need to sell out to succeed, that you can run your own office without having to build kitchen extensions in North London for the rest of your life. I hope you will see that it is still possible today to pursue your ideals and obsessions through the practice of architecture, however varied that practice or that architecture may be. All 3 lectures are examples of how to adapt without losing your integrity. Our guests tonight are Tilo Herlach, Simon Hartmann, and Simon Frommenwiler, collectively known as HHF Architects. In 2003, they set up their practice in Basel, Switzerland. In a short 8 years, they have built about 20 projects worldwide, an astonishing number for any new practice now employing about 10 people. Deliberately seeking collaborations, they have worked with various other architecture firms and artists such as Ai Weiwei. Despite their self-confessed pragmatism, they have managed to design and build memorable pieces of architecture, such as their Baby Dragon Pavilion in China, the Ruta del Peregrino in Mexico, their fashion center in Berlin, and their art farm in upstate New York. You might have seen many of those featured in magazines. Each of them brings something different to the table. One of them worked for SOM in New York and taught with Harry Gugger at ETH Lausanne. One was a teacher at Herzog & de Meuron's ETH Studio Basel and is currently on the council of the Swiss Architecture Museum. One is a planning and urbanism advisor for the Swiss Institute of Architects in Basel. And this diversity is reflected in their work, which ranges from small objects and pavilions to interiors, exhibition designs, renovations, houses, museums, corporate and transport buildings, as well as all the way up to urban strategies and master plans. HHF have been widely published and have been teaching at a number of schools, such as UIA Mexico City, MIT, ETH Lausanne, and Studio Basel, and most recently at HTA Fribourg. That's Fribourg in Switzerland, I guess, not Freiburg in Germany. HHF are part of a new generation of Swiss architects that also includes EM2N, who were here at the AA last year, and Christ Gantenbein. This is a generation that follows in the footsteps of Herzog & de Meuron, Peter Zumthor, and Marcel Meili in their belief that architecture means building. But it is a generation that abandons the heroism of a singular signature in favor of a collaborative pragmatism. Please welcome HHF Architects to what will be hopefully their first of many AA lectures.
Thank you, Oliver. We are terribly bad in English, but we thought this is not our problem. This is your problem for tonight, because we didn't want to miss the chance to come, the 3 of us, to this prestigious school as AA, and so we will rotate for it will be kind of fun, I hope, for the projects. First of all, Oliver said some things. This is, we like that picture, so we like to show it. 7 architects, 3 interns, 1 administration. This is the office building, a project of about 2 years ago. We moved in almost 2 years ago. Old ice cream factory. It's a very simple renovation with all the cheapest materials you can imagine, but with nice spaces and nice people. When we were asked to do that lecture, this is always a moment to think about your own practice and about why you do what you do, and so we wrote this short text with this title, or this introduction to the lecture, with this title, Formalistic Pragmatism. It's 2 words that architects don't like, but it's 2 words that are at the essence or at the heart of our business. We create forms, and we have to, even if formalistic, of course, means that the form is too present or there is no content. Formalism and forms are, we believe in geometry, we believe in forms as what we have to offer as architects. And pragmatism is another word. We have to build. I mean, there is a lot of good people who do nice drawings, a lot of people who can talk well about architecture. But what makes the architect in our eyes is that we build. So in order to be able to build, one has to put himself in the position to build. So this pragmatism, I mean, Charles Sanders Peirce, one of the founder of pragmatism, in one of his essays, shows these 2 diagrams saying that left and right for a clear mind is the same because the inner structure is the same. I think this is a nice example to show that for an architect this is not the same, because even though the pillars, if we read this as a floor plan, the pillars is the same, this is 2 different buildings, just one with turned like that, or you turn the same 45 degrees and you get a different building. I think, without getting long, that in a lot of our projects, this kind of simple twists are one of the methods how we try to change existing or banal things into something that seems more interesting to us. This is another interesting diagram in this essay about the definition of a path, which is the length and what, from where to where it leads. Again, I think this is exactly where the architect comes into his main role, that it is a difference where the path leads through, and not only where it starts and where it ends. So, in Switzerland, we normally don't do kitchen extensions. We do garden rooms. And this is another important thing. Even if Oliver rightly said you don't want to do kitchen extensions for the rest of your life, I think it's important that you start with kitchen extensions and that you grasp every opportunity you can get to do architecture, because no one waited for any one of us after his studies. So I will show quickly some images of these kind of projects where this is the outside of the same, so simple extension. This is a chocolate shop, a restaurant and bar, Swiss pavilion for the Sao Paulo Biennale, PAMI shop. Let's say the role of an architect for this kind of programs is, for a young one, that he's cheap. There is a lot of people who would like to have a lot of architecture but cannot afford it. And this is, in our eyes, the best clients you can have as a young office, because it's the only way how you get in a power position if the client is aware that he doesn't pay you enough for all the heart you put into your work. So while we were doing all these small works, we had the chance, and I think this is also important to understand why we had a lot of publications too early or very early. We got this opportunity to do a pavilion in China. Started 2004. It was a group project, 17 architects involved, and this was a lot of guys with black suits in the desert or in a place with funny hats, and it was a good experience not only for what then came out as a result, but it was also a very early contact with a lot of interesting other architects of our age. Here, you mentioned Chris Gantenbein. It's a lot of good, nice friends now. This guy, Ai Weiwei, the Chinese artist, you know, maybe also because of his toxic last installation in Tate New Modern, was like the big discovery for us in that process, because we had the chance that he liked our pavilion so much that he called 3 months later and asked if we want to do further collaborations with him. And this got very. I mean, this you will see a lot of projects that are issued by this collaboration or are due to that collaboration, and this is also maybe important thing. Get a godfather as a young. I mean, if you get a godfather like that as a young office, then it's really. It's really important things can happen. So and mainly because in a situation where like a star artist asks a young firm and gets for this project kind of a client to the firm, then these collaborations can be much more radical than what you can do with the new husband of your mother or with your grandmother or whatever is kind of this junior helping things. So this is some images of this first trip to China. Beautiful country, a lot of shapes we have never seen in our lives, exotism, and we were struck by these openings, by the variety of shapes of openings, because in this mild climate you don't have doors that have to protect you from snow like in Switzerland, but it can be free as shapes. Exotism with dragons, and then these artificial natures. So this was kind of inspired by these elements. We designed an object which had this vague name of mini structure for children. This was like the program. The rest we had to invent ourselves. And we decided that we leave all technical things away. So to create something which stands at the given site in a park and should allow small children to play, watched by the parents, because it's no child is playing alone in this park, or groups of children, and this is kind of to show. This is these hexagons and in 3 dimensions, so the children can crawl through these holes, can write their numbers. It's full of phone numbers now, and with keys and with. So it's really used, and it's used as a three-dimensional playground for children. They are not fake, they told us.
Thank you very much. As Simon said, this was one of our very first projects, and it was our first project abroad. So one of the main questions for us was communication. And one thing was like reduction just to one material, so we were sure we can handle with concrete. And even if there is quite a difficult or rich shape, we tried to describe it in a very easy way. So, and no one of us was able to talk Chinese, and if you're here listening to me, you maybe understand how difficult it can be to tell something in a foreign language, and I hope you understand me a little bit, or you can follow. So we just, here you can see one of these shelters, and we just gave this vague description of the construction. There were no precise construction plans, except of certain elements. We made a pattern of 11 three-dimensional shapes, which is an endless pattern, and then just choosing some of them and grouping them into the structure. The plan we've sent to China was just the unfolded object, and on the construction side they just made it on the other way around with very simple tools, a meter and an angle, and without being maybe able to understand the two-dimensional drawing while cutting all the elements, putting them together, the shape itself is like coming out of this very simple drawing. This is the ironwork they started. You see, they started with not with an exact plan, but just by try and error. So starting with the iron, then putting all these elements into this iron, cutting them in the right shape, and at the end pouring the concrete in between all these elements. This is then now how it is used. It's quite a thick wall, up to 2 meters, but mostly hollow. Another very early project was for a young family who needed more space and wanted to have an extension of their old house, and more or less just wanted a new roof. So this is as you see, kind of the house as it was before. We were quite under pressure because the neighbor was Pierre Demeron, who introduced us to the client, and both houses on the left and on the right were very famous in Basel. And so we had to think about what are we going to do. So we just read a little bit in the history of architecture and found a project by Praille Acacias, who has built the house where Pierre Demeron was living. And we found this weekend house, which is like a very archaic project. It's just a shelter, it's this roof and the fireplace. So it's like a prototype of a very warm house or atmosphere. On the right side you see something we found at the same time, and on this last trip to China, we were very fascinated by this advertisement walls. Is this the right word? Billboards. With this texture, and we tried to adapt this into this roof. It's a little bit like an elephant skin. This is now the project. It's like cutting the head of an egg and have introducing a flat iron and a flat roof, and just putting this very archaic type of house on top of it and giving it like a total new meaning to this house. Very important, this element of the chimney section, not very interesting. In order to save costs, we've built the new roof on top of the old one, and the old one was demolished after the new one was built. The floor plan is just a very simple program. In the middle you have two bedrooms, one for the male and female. And on the left and on the right is the storage space and a very small bath. With this angle in the plan, it's like giving more force to the perspective and having a very nice view into the neighbor's trees. It's the neighbor has a very nice park, and it's mostly just a view into this park. Another project, same situation, young family with a very small house, and they wanted more or less to double the surface. On the right side you see some of these houses, like the house was before, very small and very not very high ceiling, a bit 2.30 meters or something, or even less, and we then try to make or turn it into a house which has some spacious quality. These were studies. It was much about reading the law, what is possible and what is not possible, and we ended at a very simple structure with like two types of sections. One which is like standard section of a pitched roof, and in the middle like a deformed shape which makes it possible to have sanitary light from the side and a small terrace in every room. Here it is also a metal cover at the outside. This is one of the bedrooms with a very smooth daylight. This is the other bedroom where you can see there's one of these terraces. Another project in Basel was quite interesting because it was dealing with also with a very nice building. In a school, we had to introduce a cafeteria, which was also used during the day, just to as an where the pupils can work and make their Aufgaben.
Homework.
Make their homework. Simple program. It's just about 60 seats for the pupils, a small kitchen and an entrance. This is the situation as it was before, quite unfriendly, especially the schoolyard was more or less just used by the teachers as a parking place, and all the qualities the schoolyard has were not used. Quite dark, with a very nice concrete work. On the backside there was a wall painting we had to preserve. So one thing was that this cafeteria was meant as like a temporary building, maybe for the next 20 or 30 years. And after demolition, you demolish this new cafeteria, you should not see anything. So this was also the question for the whole construction. We tried to solve or to make a project just with one gesture, that like connecting this schoolyard with a little bit higher cafeteria with a very big stair where you can sit on, and at the same time all this gesture should solve all the problems like furniture and sunshade and everything. this was the first model of the construction, and everything was just built in wood. Then we tried to use as much standard elements we could find. All the radius and from the wood, or you could just buy like this. Everything was integrated in this woodwork, so nose reduction, lighting, everything. As we had to hide this wall painting on the back side, we decided to work together with this artist. This is one of his works. He's always working very geometrically, so this was very good for the project. So he all this rhythm with the colors, it's different, slightly different gray tones, are elaborated together with this artist. Some details. Material is aluminium and wood, so more or less just everything a joiner can cut himself. All the furniture, the built-in furniture, was integrated in this back wall, except the furniture itself. This massive wood was specially designed then for this mensa or cafeteria. Here you see like this inside-outside situation with the sunscreen on the top, and how it is used and giving a total new quality to this schoolyard in summertime.
One of the topics was to find culturally a home which is connecting to the younger generation. So at some point, one of the students told us that he feels like in an iPod, which we took as a compliment. I'm going to show you 3 projects which we have been doing in upstate New York, and one of them is right now under construction, and all of them are in collaboration with this Chinese artist Simon already mentioned before, Ai Weiwei. The situation, of course, to work on such projects is compared to the smaller and local projects. I mean, they're also not that big, but they're, of course, working from afar, it just brings up different issues. And so coming back to the question of pragmatism, we will maybe touch 1 or 2 questions which were getting quite important for us at that point. So this is a house 2 hours upstate from the city, a fantastic, huge site, fantastic property, 90,000 square meters. And this 2 art collecting couple, which was approaching Ai Weiwei and indirectly us with that collaboration, had a great apartment, though they didn't feel culturally at home and very dense in the city. And we were quite free to come up with a concept to find a home which they felt not only comfortable but also culturally at ease. So with the time, this also became some sort of dream house or projection from what we would expect a country house in New York or in the United States would and could be. So you see this new road going up, all these trees, which this is a photo taken by, I think, Bing or so during the construction process. So we had a landscape architect, and we could take away a lot of these trees, and you would come up and you don't really see the house, and you come up, and at some point there's these 4 boxes, and you don't really know what it is, and it's like an object out of scale. But on the inside, it's a very different feeling, and the house is a typical balance frame wood construction. We, coming from Switzerland, the most natural thing would be to do it a concrete building. This is also what we're planning to do. But we realized that the general contractor, which we at least were then very happy with, but they couldn't do it, or the price was just much too high. But eventually we were really happy that it changed, and so that we could really go into this different kind of construction typology, which we would not have had the chance. Talking about the pragmatic approach of building, one of them is we were trying to find key details which were important for us, and so that we could control the construction. This counts for interior and for exterior. This showed how this corrugated metal elements were wrapping around the outside, so that, which would prevent us from having to draw up all facade details, which we would not be able to control from afar, probably anyway. So that there were always 4 different type of ways how to connect it, and there was just a rule how to adapt it, so that there's never twice above each other the same detail. And the same also counts for inside. There also from the inside, we were looking for a number of very simple key details, always in close collaboration with the executing contractor, so that we would come with an idea and then sit together with him and talk about what he can do, and then trying to develop something so that we could be sure that we know how the things will be done. So this means that there's a way or 2-3 details how everything in that house is connecting to each other, so how the wall is touching the wood and how the wood furniture is put onto the wood floor. So I'm quickly going to walk through the house with some images. So whereas the outside is very rigid, on the inside it's a very open and astonishingly bright space where the room is sort of organized in a loop from a double height living room up to with the use of a hidden stair up to like a commander bridge hanging over the living room, library and working space. So behind that bookshelf there's this hidden staircase, and we had some code issues, and when the building inspector was coming in to take, I don't know how you say it, take off or to get the building permit, sign off, he didn't even see that hidden stair, which prevented us from changing some details. And so upstairs there's a little bit less space because we have all these double height spaces, but there's mainly a guest room, a smaller guest room, and the master bedroom area, and directly connected to this more very bright but a little bit more private master bathroom part. And then on the outside it's this almost, I don't know, I mean elegant house, at least from this side, but from the approaching southern part, it's very closed. On the same huge property, we could also do a small deck over the creek there and the pool. And right now, out of that collaboration, there's another project under construction. The client asked us to develop, I would say small, but now looking at the footprint of the original house, it doesn't even look that small. A house based on the needs of a 3-part program, a bedroom, a day working room. In the meanwhile, they got 2 kids, and a small office space. And some years ago, we worked on a similar project, which is also divided in 3 different wings, and we liked that. And now working on that project, we found a way to reuse that. We often do this. We start working on something, and then maybe we put it away, and then maybe we take it later again and develop it. And very often, I would say, the second time it's getting better, and this also counts for these 3 spaces connecting with this round circle shaped wall very direct way to connect them. 3 covered balconies, and in the middle the space is organized with 2 boxes. On the lower floor there's a parking garage, and each of these spaces, would be the model of our English intern. It was the first model she ever did. This is the view, and you see, I mean, their model got much better, and the model technique got much better. I think she would be ashamed if she knows that we showed that here. But somehow we liked it today when we prepared the lecture. So the bedroom with this fantastic view, and so the gardener even is not, at that moment was taking away some of the trees. And then this middle space it was also quite bright with 1 skylight, and then this interesting, very narrow situation where you enter and there's going to be a long table. And this is also maybe interesting. This is a very direct way also how we communicate if we are not on site. So we have somebody local. Sometimes, of course, we go there, but we cannot go there all the time, especially for very little budget like this. So they go there, they take pictures, and we just comment on them, and we force them, to go and take really the pictures of exactly what they work on right now. So we are a little bit a pain in the ass, and this is how we then tell them what to do, and that is what is happening right now. It's the corrugated metal here in Cortin style, so that it looks a little bit less important and almost older than the main house on the side. And right now there's being the wood being adapted on the inside. Another building which we did for another client, but nearby that site, only a half-hour car drive, is a private gallery and art storage for contemporary art. This is again in upstate New York. It's again on a fantastic private property with a small lake and a very beautiful house from the 80s. Here you see an image during construction. So this would be on the right side, this funny shaped, little bit odd looking building from the 80s. And then on the left, the storage and gallery space, whereas we had a very large budget for the house, not for the small guest house, but for the main house. This was a very, very little and limited budget, and the climate is quite extreme. So it can be like 40 or 50 degrees, from depending on winter to summer. And we found prefabricated steel elements which are used in that area, but also in other areas in the United States for agricultural and industrial purposes. And we were then trying to do something interesting with this material so that we could afford 400 square meters for about $300,000, insulated space, including fee, including security, including HVAC, everything. So this is the drawing which we did together with this company, which in this case was located in Toronto. And they were so happy with that project that they started to do commercials, just being so proud that you could do something so different and so special with their product. This is then some images from the construction site. You see this very easy way how these pieces are put together. You put it up, you connect it to the basement, to this concrete slab, and then on the inside, again, a very direct way we found this so-called batt insulation. PVC, little bit shiny, same as the sheetrock white painting elements. And even though it's this strange object, and you wouldn't know what it's expecting you, so you have this metallic appearance, and you come in, but there's always a direct connection to the site. There's this backspan of this interior ramp following the site. You walk it up and down, and there are 3 lights, 3 windows to the north, and it's quite bright. And It seems to work quite well. It's very calm, of course, very heavily insulated. And this is the showroom, and in the middle on the right side there's a small office, and on the left side a showroom and the storage on top. And here are some images. You see this is used as a picture gallery. It's actually private, but sometimes they do public viewings. This is a detail from this heavy corrugated steel pieces on the outside.
And this is such a nice link to the next image. Donald Judd, Marfa. For those amongst you who are interested in architecture, the two New York houses, of course, you immediately see the big American architects with chimney and the detailing of the wood, and then of course this roof of Donald Judd. This is even nice because it's the two projects, also Marfa, the same one, somehow combined as a reference. For us, this was this work. These two American projects were, of course, interesting to get into something which is somehow very far, but growing up in Switzerland or the education of a Swiss architect in the 90s is minimalism and a lot of Donald Judd. So this was also somehow dealing with the own education, these projects, in a different way. And the project I show now is maybe, and of course also, dealing with the own education, but also free yourself from what you learned in school. And this project is in the same, now that Simon and Tilo, I listened finally to Simon and Tilo. I also heard how much the three of us talked about fear of the dark, fear of the unknown, and this is also, of course, a lot driven by fear of winning a competition in Germany, which is far away for us. This was an international invited competition for a fashion center. This is an image from when we first went there. Osthafen is a former industrial harbor, now converted into the chic fashion district with MTV Europe, so fashion and media. And as you can see, some traces of an industrial past, and then glass and steel, the building itself, the site, how we saw it the first time. Then this is the owner of this building did the competition, and he proudly showed us this building. And we, of course, understood that what he would like is to have exactly the same, again, because this fits so fantastically well with fashion and with all that fashion how these guys would like to live, like in a French chateau with some glass and steel and so. So this is like the perfect dream of these fashion people. And one of the reasons why we thought it functions so well is because it's old. This is like something you cannot do if you do a new building, and it is very powerful with these shapes of the arches getting in the light. So that you do not have to do a lot inside this building. You just put in some fashion things, and then it already looks okay. So we thought if we do a new building, we have to start with the structure, because ours will be 40 by 40 meters, so it cannot be the facade which does what the facade does for the old building, which is only like 15 meters. So we have to invent a structure which gives that sense of branding the building itself, and only so that you just can put in some things. The only thing we did before, this is the white things there. This is a project we were invited to by elder architects in Basel, with the garage underneath, and so you can see this is the entrance, and then this space of 160 meters. This is our only encounter with structure as giving like the character for a space before, and we think this is the best part of that development. The garage. You can see how the structure moves and lets in natural light, and so it structures and gives a character to the whole space. So we thought of that, and this is also fear again is important for that project, because this was the Berlin client is fantastic, but this client for that garage was really difficult, because it was one of these general contractors who basically tried to screw the architect and the guy who will buy it and everyone just to save money. So this structure was also successful for us, because it was designed in a moment and he didn't understand what this will mean, and then he only understood it when it was built, but then it was done and safe. So we thought, after all the elder colleagues told us, you do a competition in Germany, are you serious? And you will know they will do anything with what you will give them, and they will not pay the fee, and they will change whatever you do. So we thought, okay, let's do something which will look good, even if they don't finish it, and even if they try to change. So let's put everything in that structure. So we did some... we just tried different approaches, how the structure could work in depth, and understood quite early that as soon as you start to do iconic shapes with the structure, sorry, then minimum of changes already makes the building shift in time. If you look at something like that, I think of the 30s or so, or then So it's very sensitive of the exact shape. So then we found something we thought is interesting, like with a high one, which allows to go with HVAC tubes, and you have crossings in the structure, because this is really the structure. This is just 4 walls with openings inside. So 4 spaces, 5 walls, and then a long one. And with the idea that, okay, you put in some very, very little things, and it's already done. So like an old building, you don't even have to put something on the wall, and it looks good. So then, this was... We were kicked out of the competition in the first round, and then we got fished again, and then we won. And so the mayor, which is like a Green Party mayor, thought this looks like a mosque, and only him dead, he would allow that someone would build a mosque in Berlin there. So only
Only upon my dead body.
Only upon my dead body.
Over my dead
Over my dead body, he said. So, okay, so we had to change something, because we wanted to win. And then, as you can see on the phase 2, we tried to adapt something which was very ornamental, but ornamental in a way that it was exactly the structure, like reproducing the structure at the outside. So this is also these differences of, we thought, okay, we could do it softer, and in the end, we just cut this second layer. I will explain in a minute, to to make it excuse me, to make it the final project which won then. So this was the competition, and this is how it is there. It was a very quick project. This, again, was kind of a lucky punch, because this developer said, okay, this convinced me, I want to build next year. So we won 2007, and we started building permit, like, we won September 2007, building permit December 2007. And then construction started. Then they didn't have money anymore, and so. But with all these stories, it was built good 2 years later. It was also clear from the beginning that this house has a lot of different phases. It is a fashion center for professionals, meaning that inside, those who have a shop like Puma or Stefanel or whatever, Street One, sell. They have fashion shows, and they have spaces where they show the new collections for the professional sellers. And in the evening there is also fashion shows and parties. This you cannot see anyway. Then so this is the context also, this root context. These concrete elements which are coming out in a way that we could control. We had the intermediate layer to control security cameras, lighting, shadow, sun shadow, and everything. Not to have all that mess outside of the building, because it was also clear from the very beginning that the cost of that building is about the cost of industrial building, and not a lot of fancy details. Here you see this situation too, this tough environment. Today we are very proud, because in this in a very bad TV show called Anna und die Liebe, which is like every day in the afternoon, the main actors play inside this building. It's like the symbol for the new Berlin fashion scene, and it's not even in the building. They just, like Denver Clan, they show from the outside, and then they switch into a very bad studio copy. Okay, so quickly, this is the entrance. There is one main space. You can see that you will see 10 times the same picture now, because inside it's 10 times the same motive as there. I will show. We could also do then things like this desk, and so one big space which is only used for some events. Then they put in all the lights, and then they clean it like you saw in the other pictures again. Then there is this. This is the Puma shop, for example. Big shops. Another shop where they really just put in the clothes. Then we have a roof terrace on one. This was it's an interesting point for the building itself, because it's kind of a weak edge of this very massive building on top of to the left, and it's also the point where you have a nice view with Alexanderplatz, or the TV tower in the end, and which is the private terrace with a palm tree on it by Street 1, one of these fashion labels. Then on top of this building, which has a formal language which is very like repeating again and again these curves. I will be quick. We decided to put something which is very different. Here you can see a little bit Mies van der Rohe, Neue Nationalgalerie. It's kind of a big roof spanning out, and you can also see, of course, one of the Zai residents with the corrugated metal facade skin. So this was kind of a reaction to this, to the all the same formal language of the main part of the building, to put on top something which should be function-wise and formally very different from what is below, to create a condition of party and whatever. What holds together this whole building is a central stair, which is again the same formal motive of two arches, sinus curves, put in the floor plan. So cut out. Here you can see. So it's we have a hole where these two sinus curves are applied, and then the stair in the middle. So what you see on this drawing is always the outline of what is the hole in the floor, and then in the inner part the stair, and it's 4 times the same stair, but because of the twist, then it's in the end something very organic, looking like pianos and or a flower. And this again, if I talk about pragmatism, we had the chance that we, as I said, in December we had to hand in the construction, or I mean, like then in January we had to hand in the construction documents. So we had to draw all that, and the guy who wanted to build, the company who wanted to build the building, had to sign off that they will draw everything according to our, or build everything according to our drawings. And of course they didn't really understand how complicated this stair will be. But they signed it, so they had to build it and had to find, this was an ex-shipping company, or they did ships, so they were able to do that, then specialized in stairs. Very short, last one. This is an example of a project in Mexico. It's again one of these group projects. It's Mexican architects we got to know in the first project we showed, Tatiana Bilbao and Derek Delekamp. They asked us, together with then Alejandro Aravena and Ai Weiwei and Chris Gantenbein, and then some Mexican local architects involved, to do each one a lookout point in for a pilgrim's route in Mexico, in Jalisco. This is a site, so it's just kind of a special loop next to this pilgrim's route. It will be in use for the first time now in May. Until now it's just construction and no pilgrims, but then they will come and flood it and put their name billboards on top of it. Family Sanchez was here, and so then it will be really finished when all these tags are on top. So this is the image I showed from Berlin. This is something we found in the own, like we thought, okay, this is maybe the most interesting angle of the Berlin project, to have where these the two same curves touch themselves or touch each other in a way that it looks like an asymmetric curve. So because this Mexican project was a very quick one, again, like 2 months of design, then everything should be done. We decided again to jump on something we didn't explore enough, we thought, in another project. So we did this, you know, when you do the holes in the wall, in the yes. If you're an electrician and you want to do a hole in a wall, a round hole, these Bohraufsätze. Drill, yeah. So it's kind of an element which looks. You don't have this here, no? Yeah. It looks like a tool, rotating or indicating already a rotation, and standing next to this pilgrim's route, and having only this purpose of leading you up, giving you shelter, leading you up, and then having a perfect horizon in this beautiful landscape, because it's really 360 degrees beautiful landscape around. This is renders, then this was construction images. Again, here we imagined very similar. You don't know how they will really cast it, but then we did these sketches of how one could do, and this is also how it was done in the end. This is now the finished project. So it's one steeper and one less steep curve. Here you see the additional use on the floor of this building with the cow shit. When people are not there, and this is the main, or the most of the time, then this is used as sun protection for cows. Are we late or?
So this is then like an encore in a concert, even if there is no applause yet. This is maybe a last short story of building a road. This was the largest group project we were invited to. It's called Orders 100. The idea behind is to have an extension for an existing city in Inner Mongolia, Ordos, and this extension, like paid by a private person. The idea behind it was to have 100 like villas or houses with the same program within 100 days from 100 projects. And I'm very glad to see John and Anne-Sophie also here. Because they're also working on this project. This had for us a story 1 year before, because it was like in a soap opera. There was like a pilot movie just with 5 projects, and with the same program, it's a villa with 100 square meters of 1,000. I'm sorry, 1,000 square meters. A swimming pool, quite large representative living area, and so on. On this first trip, we were very fascinated by this landscape. It's like these sand dunes, a very soft landscape, and we wanted to make or design a building which is where the space or the spatial quality is like treated like a landscape. And like making a house which could be like a scenery for a James Bond movie, quite extravagant. Then they started to build, and we saw that we cannot control everything. So for us, it was quite an important part. There are at least two material, like concrete and wood floors. So, but it's just everything is concrete. So it was for us. It was not so successful because it was much too complicated. Also, the geometry, like a twisted geometry with 45 degrees and cut in an angle. So for this next step, we decided we tried to make something very simple, and just like doing or building a house where the question how can we construct or how can we build it is not a question, because it's obvious that it's exactly the same as do everywhere in China. It's like a concrete structure with brick in between. So this is an outside view, a very normal house, with a sanitary light, which is very important. So inside, like this is a very simple floor plan. The sanitary light is very important for the building. You see here the roof, the upper floor, like this bedroom has more or less no direct view to the outside, but it's much about all these connections in between the building, like from one room to another one. So this was like one story, but of course, because this project is so special, there was a second story behind, and which does only make sense within this context. So all these 100 architects were in orders from all over the world, and the first question was, which is your project? And then we wanted to, very simple, wanted just to make a project which is clearly our project. And because it's so far away, we tried to make a kind of a Google project. So the roof was just our brand, HHF, but integrating all these shed structure, and it's but this, of course, it just makes sense within this context. This like how we tried to give it a shape, and then ended with this kind of shed roofs, like an old fabric. Was it?
Factory.
Like an old factory.
And the first one to see. Yeah.
Huh? Oh, Simon has to add something. So
No.
Go.
I know. And the first one to see and to understand it was John. Yeah. Everyone else didn't understand the HHF.
No, because we didn't really know if we can do this, and if we not
him.
completely decide everything. So we asked what John is thinking, and John told us it's completely okay to do it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. Are there any questions in the room? Does anybody want to know how to get their hands onto projects worldwide? Maybe I can kind of kick it off with a quick question. It seems there's something very interesting about seeing all these projects together, kind of, in all these kind of remote places of the world. They all have a slight sense of the unfinished. How which I personally find extremely un-Swiss. If you don't normally look at kind of Swiss architects, they're obsessed, fetishistic about the detail, about the finishing. You don't seem to have inherited that trait. How does that work? How do you kind of let go to that kind of level?
I mean, I think this is definitely a result that we started to work so early on these international projects, that we realized that we have to focus on some elements which we will have to and want to be able to control and which are important for us, and other things which we can negotiate with and give away in a way. And I think I don't know what the story would have been if we were with a different, chronology of things. But I think this definitely, at some point, we just realized there are some things which are important for us, and this has to be incorporated in the structure and in the basic ideas. This is also what Simon said before with the fear, the fear that somebody can change it. And there is also a reason that maybe we didn't show the whole housing project and only the underground parking garage, because this was our ambitious first project where we tried to control everything and to reinvent the world new, and then we just realized that it's not so easy, and there is a reason why not everybody's reinventing the world new. So this is like learning by doing the hard tour, and in a way we were lucky to do that so early, I would say.
Yes, but I think it's also just not so interesting, finished buildings, because all the good buildings are good, even though something else came and changed a little bit, and so the game is how much do you have to control, and it's still good, or it's already good. So, and then, but if you look at this Mensa Kirschgarten. This is maybe the most finished, and one we didn't show, the Bachmann. There is a restaurant we did in Basel, and this is it's also fun to do a lot of nice detailing. But I think it's important that you're always aware that other people have also ideas, and they also want to change, put on a radiator later because times changed, and if then the goal of the architect was to have everything flush, normally nothing is left anymore.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
Hi, I really like your presentations, and I'm just interested
and the work?
Yes. I'm quite interested at the idea of your mission statements, and it's been 8 years now. And if you were given a chance to make a new mission statement after this 8 years of
earn money.
Yeah, and money. What would be your new mission statement collectively?
No, I think I think mission statements. I mean, this is a funny story because it's true, but it's also clear that we really don't believe in mission statements. On one hand, on the other hand, I think what is behind a mission statement formalizes, I think, what the real goals are. And if someone sets up an office to get famous or to get rich, then this has an impact on his work, I guess. And in that sense, I think that our first this was also the first time for example, these two guys met, this first meeting when we founded the office. So it was about being honest and telling what do we want with that office. And fortunately, no one sat there and said, oof, I just need 5,000 francs a month. Or, oh, I want to teach in the AA one day. You know, this is this kind of collateral damage that you can live with one day, but it cannot be a goal. And I think that this focus on we want to build in opposition to all these theoretical guys like him, for example. No, I think this is a mission. This is a difference. There is a lot of people who think, yeah, HHF a little bit pragmatic, huh? Yes, of course. And if you don't want to build, if you don't want to also make compromises, go to think of, okay, this woman wants to open a shop and she has 30,000 francs. What can you do? You cannot do like a very spectacular architecture with that amount of money. If you don't, I mean, if someone has so little money, this also means that they cannot just throw away things again after 1 year. So it has to be stable, it has to meet the law. So then you get in a position where you have to be very focused on what are we able to do. Can we convince her to wrap everything with this brown paper which is used to wrap the chocolate? And will she, I mean, yes, this means that it might be less usable and quicker to replace, but then that's what I mean with this power position. If you are young and you don't need the money because you don't have children yet, and you don't have, yeah, maybe, I mean, this in our, so you are not like all these guys who work for Herzog and Dömberon for a lot of years, and then with 45 go for an office. This is a different situation, you know. Then you have to set up already a style of life. We were lucky enough to start shortly after the studies and had no big necessities. And so these 3 sentences is also naive mission statement of where we would like to go to. And it was not only a joke if I said, today, of course we say, hey, now it's after 8 years, the money must be an issue. I mean, we're old enough now not to compete with guys who say, I do whatever you want for any price, and I put all night shifts in it. And this is difficult.
Hello. I was just wondering about the project that you say that of the Ordos 100, that I follow it a lot of times, because of the Mexican architects that were there. And I was wondering if there's some connection, is it work? Yeah. Between that project and the pilgrimage project in Jalisco, that, like, how it goes, like one, and is there like any connection, not only of Alway Way, but also of maybe the Mexican architects that were involved in those projects? Was there like something, did you met them, and because of that? Because I've seen like a lot of things, at least in Mexico, that's how it works a lot of times. Is it that?
I mean, Simon said it, I think, at the beginning, that we met them,
I wasn't
some of
in the
them
beginning.
already in Jinhua in China, in this first park. And of course, these projects are already always generating a lot of, it's also a network, of course, and but it's not only that. They really became friends, and then we started to also competitions in Switzerland together. And of course, this is an important factor, yes.
But you are worse than me with questions. The exact question was?
No, just if there's like one, because which project was first, the Ordos one or the one of the pilgrims?
Ordos was first, but we met them in 2004 already.
Okay.
of course, the common link is Herzog and de Meuron, because Tatiana Bilbao is a good friend of Jacques Herzog,
Yeah.
and we were one of these young offices that got a little help, and so but in Jinhua there was a lot of not so funny people, but the young Mexicans were funny and the young Swiss were funny. So
Yeah,
in the end, this was the beginning of a big big friendship, really, between these. And so we went there to teach then in Iberoamerican, and they came. We invited them for a like Mexican evening in the Swiss Architecture Museum. And so then this continued, and then we met again in Ordos, and then a year later or 2 years later for that. So I think this is really important for this a group, a generation thing, but it's also based on this is really Jacques Herzog is kind of the godfather of that, one must say. This was also what he said when he said, there is this Ordos thing. I had the chance that, how did he say it? I had the chance that I very early got into international circles. He was hanging around at AA by accident. He was in here when there was the final critiques and so on. So this and got involved with other people, this was one strategy, I think, of their office, a brilliant strategy, how to know what touches people where. So he very clearly offered to a generation of young architects to get to know other interesting offices, and this is also maybe besides the shape and so, or the object itself. These friendships is what lasts most and what is the most interesting about these group projects.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much once more. And
Thank you.